You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. You don't need to write long messages, pouring out your heart just to be heard by someone who never truly listened in the first place. You need one moment, one decision, one action rooted in self-respect, and it changes everything. Here's the truth. Most people don't want to say out loud, toxic people aren't complicated. They're predictable. They come in patterns. Same tactics, different names. They poke until you react. They twist your words. They guilt you. They make you feel like peace is a luxury you don't deserve. But the moment you stop feeding that cycle, the game ends. You do this once, and they never bother you again. Start here. Set a silent boundary, not a loud one. Loud boundaries come from pain. Silent boundaries come from clarity. When someone crosses your line and you don't scream, you don't threaten, you don't fight, you just shift. You stop replying, you stop sharing, you stop entertaining their chaos. That silence is deafening, and they feel it. It's not passive aggressive, it's self-preservation. You don't need to get into debates with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to win every argument. When someone shows you a version of themselves that's cruel, manipulative, or draining, you don't need to ask why they did it. You need to ask why you stayed after they did. And once that question gets honest, the door opens. Some people only stay in your life because you keep letting them explain away their bad behavior. The moment you stop over-explaining, they panic. They thrive off your need to be understood. So stop handing them that power. No is a full sentence. That doesn't work for me is enough. You don't owe paragraphs to people who wouldn't give you a sentence of accountability. Next time a toxic person tries to bait you, don't react. Mirror. Not emotionally, but calmly. Let their sarcasm echo back as indifference. Let their insults bounce off a face that doesn't flinch. Let them watch you protect your peace without lifting your voice. It confuses them. Why? Because they can't argue with someone who doesn't step into the ring. Then go deeper. Don't just cut contact. Cut access. There's a difference. You can block someone's number and still think about them all day, but when you truly remove access to your energy, your time, your emotional space, that's when you win. You stop talking about them, you stop checking on them, you stop letting their shadow live rent-free in your head, and that is where your freedom begins. If someone can disrespect you once and stay in your life, what you've told them is, there's room for this behavior here. But the first time you calmly show them there's not, everything shifts. Not because they changed, but because you did. And sometimes all it takes is one firm, quiet move to reclaim your peace. This isn't about revenge. It's not about being cold. It's about drawing the kind of line that says, I love myself too much to live in your storm. And the moment you make that choice, even once, toxic people lose the map to find you. And you start breathing again. Toxic people often rely on your reaction to fuel their behavior. It's not just what you say. They're watching how you respond, how flustered you get, how much attention you give them. The louder your reaction, the more control they feel they have over you. They thrive in chaos. They know how to press the right buttons because they've learned your emotional patterns. The moment you start raising your voice, over-explaining yourself, or defending every move you make, they feel like they're winning. That's why setting a silent boundary is the one thing that flips the entire game on its head. It confuses them. They expect a fight. They expect tears. They expect drama. But when all they get is silence, stillness, and no reaction, they don't know what to do with it. That's power. A silent boundary is not about ghosting people or being passive-aggressive. It's about making a decision within yourself that someone no longer deserves access to the parts of you they once exploited. It's a decision that says, I'm not going to teach you how to treat me anymore. I'm just going to show you that mistreating me means losing me. You don't announce it. You don't warn them. You don't even argue. You just shift. The conversations become shorter. The explanations disappear. The emotional investment dries up. You start replying with peace instead of proving your point. And slowly, they start to realize that they're losing the grip they once had. Toxic people don't respond to logic, they respond to energy. That's why trying to reason with them feels like talking in circles. They twist facts, they deflect blame, they manipulate emotions. But when you respond with calm detachment, when you set a boundary that isn't loud or reactive, they start to lose their leverage. Think of it like turning off the lights in a room where someone's trying to perform a show. The audience is gone, the spotlight is off, the performance becomes pointless, and eventually they walk off the stage. What makes silent boundaries so powerful is that they protect your peace without putting you in emotional debt. You don't have to spend your energy explaining why you're hurt. You don't have to write essays defending your decision. You don't even have to convince them they're wrong because you've stopped seeking their validation. That's what changes everything. When you stop needing toxic people to understand your pain, you finally start healing. And they feel that shift. They feel your silence. They notice the absence of your attention. And they realize that whatever game they were playing, they're now playing it alone. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require confrontation. Not everyone deserves closure. Not everyone deserves a goodbye speech. Some people deserve nothing more than your absence. And when you give them that, not out of hate, but out of love for yourself, it's a message louder than words. It says, I've outgrown the need to argue with you. I've outgrown the need to be seen by someone who only looks at me when they want something. I've outgrown the cycle. And here's what's even more powerful. When you start setting silent boundaries, you start attracting peace into your life. You realize that not everything needs your reaction. Not every insult needs your defense. Not every accusation needs your explanation. Some things are simply not worth your breath. That's not weakness. That's maturity. That's emotional intelligence. That's you choosing to respond from a place of strength rather than insecurity. The moment you choose stillness over screaming, quiet over chaos, you begin to rewrite the rules of how people can treat you. And toxic people, they don't stick around when they're not being fed. When you stop being available for the games, the drama, the emotional tug of war, they retreat. Not because you told them to, but because your energy no longer entertains their dysfunction. You don't need to fight to be free. You just need one quiet decision made in clarity, acted upon in peace. Set the boundary once. Let your silence speak the message you're tired of repeating, and watch how quickly those who thrived off your reactions suddenly have nothing left to take. Toxic people rarely listen to your words. They study your patterns. They want to see how much space they can take up in your life before you push back. And when you try to argue or explain, they use your own words against you. That's why traditional confrontation doesn't work with them. What does work is mirroring, not mocking, not copying, but reflecting their behavior back at them in a calm, composed, and emotionally neutral way. When someone speaks with disrespect and you mirror it back with quiet boundaries instead of emotional chaos, they see themselves in a way that's hard to escape. And most toxic people cannot stand their own reflection. Mirroring is a subtle form of communication that doesn't require direct confrontation. It's about holding up a mirror without raising your voice. It's when someone tries to manipulate you with guilt, and instead of justifying yourself, you let the guilt fall flat. It's when someone tries to gaslight you into believing your reality is false, and instead of spiraling into self-doubt, you calmly say, that's not how I experienced it, and leave it at that. The point is not to get them to agree. The point is to anchor yourself in truth and let their confusion be theirs to carry. And that's what makes mirroring so powerful. It's not defensive, it's reflective. It doesn't attack, but it makes toxic behavior uncomfortable to maintain. Let's say someone repeatedly interrupts you in conversation, not by accident, but as a way to dominate or dismiss your thoughts. You don't interrupt back with the same aggression. You mirror their lack of respect with firm silence. You stop engaging until they notice. You don't explain, you keep cutting me off. You just go quiet until the weight of their rudeness becomes obvious. It forces awareness, not always right away, but over time, your behavior tells them, I won't play that game. Or maybe someone constantly blames you for things that are out of your control. Instead of rushing to defend yourself like before, you stop feeding that blame. When they say, this is your fault, you respond with stillness. I don't see it that way. No emotion, no back and forth, no trying to convince them otherwise. That calm disagreement, mirroring their own deflection with unwavering steadiness, stops the conversation from becoming another round of emotional ping pong. The key is staying grounded. Toxic people want you to get emotional because emotions are easier to manipulate. But when you're calm, when you're centered, when you mirror their patterns instead of reacting to them, they lose the ability to control the interaction. You're not there to fix them. You're there to protect you. And mirroring is one of the cleanest ways to do that without compromising your integrity. It's important to remember that mirroring isn't about revenge. You're not doing it to hurt them. You're doing it to help yourself. You're creating a psychological pause, a moment where they can see their own reflection through your unshakable response. Whether they take that moment to change is not your responsibility. Your job is to stop giving them the emotional firewood they need to keep the dysfunction burning. And this doesn't just apply to verbal abuse. It applies to emotional withdrawal, manipulation, guilt tripping, even passive aggression. When someone sends you a cold, clipped message meant to trigger your insecurity, and you respond with emotional neutrality, they're left holding their own bitterness. You're not cold. You're just not playing anymore. And in that moment, they are forced to sit with themselves. Mirroring helps you shift the balance of power without drama. You're no longer participating in the tug of war. You're letting them pull at a rope you no longer hold. You don't need to yell or perform. You need to reflect calmly and clearly that their behavior isn't getting the reaction they want.